Hey guys, today we descend into the freezing, indifferent waters off the coast of Patagonia, where steel ghosts drift in silence, and time doesn't pass, only pressure builds. You're climbing into the narrow hatch of ARA San Juan, a black-bodied Argentine submarine built for stealth and endurance. The interior hums with a mechanical rhythm, the sort of sound you don't notice until it stops. Outside, the waves slap playfully against the hull, completely unaware they're about to become the last to see this ship alive. You're surrounded by tight corridors, muggy recycled air, and jokes that bounce between sailors to cut the monotony. And then, everything stops. Not dramatically, not with a bang, just a long, blank pause you don't come back from. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and what time it is where you are. I love watching this turn into a global sleepover. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into today's journey together. You feel the shift, the moment it begins, 1 foot already on the ladder, one eye on the console blinking green. November 15th, 2017, ARA San Juan glides somewhere in the South Atlantic, nearly 500 kilometers off the Argentine coast. She's on her way back from Ushuaia to Mar del Plata, running submerged but not hiding, just working, just doing her job. She's reported in that morning, a quick message, minor issue, bit of seawater in through the snorkel, fire in battery 3, but don't worry, it's under control. You've probably had worse issues with your phone charger. 44 people aboard. A crew of specialists, including the Navy's first female submarine officer, Eliana Kratskik, who's become something of a national figure already. The sub itself, a German-built TR-1707 diesel-electric workhorse. Not flashy, but it can dive deep, run silent, and stay underwater for weeks when needed. You're in a machine designed to vanish, intentionally, but not permanently. By now, you've already crossed into that realm where pressure feels like weight on your lungs. It's dark, quieter than it should be, except for the occasional thrum of the propulsion system. You don't see fish. You don't even see light. Just console screens and the occasional smirk from the sonar operator who swears he saw something huge on radar earlier. Probably just a whale. Probably. Then comes the gap. You don't hear the silence at first because you're busy checking gauges, but topside, they're starting to frown. The routine check-in doesn't come, nor does the next, and then the next. You've heard radio blackouts happen, satellites glitch. This far south, everything's a bit sketchy, but an hour becomes 2, 2 becomes 12. The Navy begins the usual checklist. Maybe the antenna is damaged. Maybe they're in a radio shadow. Maybe. Eventually, they can't deny the thing nobody wants to say. ARA San Juan is missing. You don't say missing lightly when you're talking about 2,000 tons of reinforced military engineering. A house made of steel doesn't just disappear. But up at under 1,000 meters of cold Atlantic water, it kind of does. Here's a historical fact most don't realize. Submarine search and rescue is one of the hardest operations on Earth. The ocean is vast, deep, unpredictable, and allergic to cooperation. It's also a little bit smug about it. You could put a city down there and still miss it with sonar. The news breaks within a day. Families gather outside the naval base in Mar del Plata, faces pressed to fences, staring at a blank horizon like they can will the sub to surface. Inside, you imagine yourself in the bunk room, cramped and sleepless. A red light hums overhead. You're trying not to look at the emergency oxygen meter. Someone cracks a joke. Another mutters a prayer. No one laughs. No one says, "Help is coming." They don't know. You probably didn't know this quirky detail. The ARA San Juan had actually been in dry dock for years. She was upgraded, refitted, modernized. The whole process took longer than expected and cost more than budgeted, as these things often do. But she came out looking tough. Clean lines, strong propulsion. Some whispered she wasn't really ready. Others said she'd been good to go. You'll hear both stories now, echoing like sonar pings in conflicting directions. Historians still argue whether her final mission was routine or reckless. Back at base, commanders go full tilt. Aircraft sweep the region, surface ships deploy. The United States sends specialized search planes with magnetic anomaly detectors. Yep, sci-fi level tech that spots weird stuff underwater. The UK, Brazil, Chile, Russia, and even NASA throw in gear or eyes. It's the kind of multinational effort usually reserved for asteroid threats and Olympic bidding wars. And yet, nothing. The ocean, you see, doesn't care how extensive your tech is. Inside the missing sub, if you're still alive, the real enemy isn't water. It's time and carbon dioxide. You can't open a window. The CO2 would be the kind of non-violent pressure that would be the same as the creature we have. And you, 2 or 3 combatants of memory, and you purge to the rest. But also, the ocean would be the first to see you. That's got a deadline. They estimate about 7 days of breathable air, if everything's functioning. That's the ticking clock families hear in their sleep. A week goes by. Public frustration simmers. Misinformation floods social media. One report says the sub was spotted near the Falklands. Another says a Russian satellite picked up a shape. Someone claims they heard banging sounds from beneath the sea. All of it feeds hope. And hope, by now, is a desperate fuel. You find yourself fixated on the last confirmed signal. A data burst about the battery issue, the fire, the submerging sequence. It ends mid-transmission. No final goodbye, no mayday, just a digital shrug. Underwater, you imagine the sub lying still. Maybe it's resting on the ocean floor. Maybe it's broken. Maybe there are survivors, tapping on the hull, waiting. Or maybe they've already gone quiet. Maybe the silence is no longer an absence, but a choice. The second week creeps in like fog through an open hatch, quiet, suffocating, and unwelcome. You're still watching the ocean, watching maps, watching news tickers. Say nothing new. Everyone becomes an amateur oceanographer overnight. Comment sections grow timelines and theories like coral on an abandoned reef. But down below, in the place no camera can reach, there's just metal and silence. Ships come and go. Planes sweep the waves in tight loops. Drones drop sensors. Sonobuoys scatter like breadcrumbs across a watery forest no one can see. Somewhere in the mix, you get a spike. A low-frequency anomaly logged by hydroacoustic stations. A boom. An underwater event. It happened just hours after the last communication from ARA San Juan. Not now, not recently. Back then, on day 1. And nobody noticed. The signal's exact coordinates are fuzzy, but the energy signature tells a brutal story. It's not a collision, not a whale, not a volcanic burst from the seabed. It's something imploding, fast, violent, catastrophic. The kind of ink pressure does to a sealed tube when it fails at 900 meters below sea level. Picture a soda can in a hydraulic press. Now multiply by 1,000. That sound, captured on sensors halfway across the rock planet, may have been the submarine's last breath, but officially, they don't confirm it. Not yet. You know how this works. Bureaucracy wears steel boots and dances slowly. Families are still holding out hope. Politicians are still making promises. Navy officials still say, "We have every reason to believe they're alive." You sip tea, scroll past conflicting updates, and wonder whether honesty might have been kinder than optimism. Back at the search zone, you drift mentally over 482,000 square kilometers of water. That's roughly the size of Spain. The sub could be anywhere down there, beneath waves that don't give hints or leave clues. Even with satellites and sonar, you're chasing whispers in a cathedral. They start to tighten the grid, focusing on where that hydroacoustic signal came from. But keep in mind, depth is just as tricky as width. The ocean isn't flat. It's pitted and scarred, full of canyons, ridges, thermal layers. It's like trying to find a lost pin cap in a mountain range made of jelly. And then there's the math. Always the math. You do it whether you want to or not. 7 days of air, 13 days since the last message. A reporter asks, "Could anyone have survived this long?" The admiral smiles. says what he must. We're not giving up. You blink, you keep blinking. You don't stop because the alternative is closing your eyes. Now, here's a fringe tidbit. One of the vessels searching the area is the Atlantis, a U.S. research ship operated by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, the same team that discovered Titanic in 1985. There's poetry in that, isn't there? The seekers of old shipwrecks chasing a modern tragedy. Some people quietly start calling this Argentina's Titanic. They aren't wrong. Fewer passengers maybe, but the same cruel formula. Overconfidence, underfunding, and the cold finality of the sea. Historians still argue whether this was truly an accident or the predictable outcome of chronic naval neglect. Budget cuts, deferred maintenance, political chess games played with soldering irons and sonar charts. At least one former officer says the San Juan wouldn't have gone to sea at all. Another insists she was mission ready. You're not sure whether to believe the blueprints or the black hyphen box data. Meanwhile, up top, families camp outside Navy bases. Not symbolically, literally. They pitch tents. They bring blankets, food, folding chairs. Children draw pictures. Grandmothers hold rosaries. They call themselves Los 44, the 44 crew members on board. One name for one heartbeat. Each family represents a different pulse in that body, now missing, maybe gone. Ileana Kroshik's name comes up a lot. She was the sub's weapons officer, Argentina's first female submariner. Her face is everywhere, on banners, t-shirts, posters. She becomes a symbol of progress, of pride, of vulnerability. Journalists lean hard into her story. It's easier to explain tragedy through a face, not a schematic. You feel a little guilty when you realize how effective it is. The Navy hosts daily press briefings. They grow shorter, less hopeful. You learn phrases like transitory anomalies and non-conclusive contact. At some point, they stop saying rescue and start saying recovery. It's subtle. One syllable makes all the difference. Remember that earlier sonar anomaly? The boom they ignored? Yeah, that becomes center stage. Turns out it wasn't just a sound. It had mass, it had shape, and it lines up perfectly with the sub's last known location. Scientists confirm it now. It was an implosion. Sudden, likely instant. No distress call, no escape, just pop and gone. You wonder, would it have felt anything? The crush depth was exceeded fast enough that consciousness wouldn't catch up. It's a strange mercy, if you can call it that. You imagine, in a flash, lights go out, noise disappears, and pressure claims the space you left behind. There's no time for fear, no time for goodbye. Just cold, and then nothing. And still, searches continue, because knowing isn't the same as finding. Families want remains, wreckage, closure. They want to be able to point to a spot on the map and say, there. They don't want mystery. They want something to bury. A private American company, Ocean Infinity, offers to help. For free. They've got autonomous underwater drones, scanning equipment, and a proven track record. They make a deal with Argentina. If they find the sub, they get paid. If not, no charge. It sounds like a gamble, but they're confident, and rightfully so. Meanwhile, you notice something shifting. The tone online, the mood in Mar del Plata. Less hope, more demand. People want accountability, not just where the submarine went, but why. Why was it at sea? Who signed off? What systems failed? And how did everyone miss the signs? All the while, beneath it all, the ocean doesn't blink. You wait. The ocean waits. But then something finally moves. Not the sea, but the people above it. On November 17, 2018, a full year after the ARA San Juan vanished, one of Ocean Infinity's autonomous vehicles sweeps its digital eye across a patch of seabed roughly 900 meters deep. The image it captures isn't ambiguous. It's not a maybe. It's not something that could be a formation. It's a submarine, a broken one, torn open at the seams, crushed, scattered, unmistakably final. You feel like you're falling, even as you sit perfectly still. The location is about 20 kilometers from the site of the underwater acoustic anomaly, which is to say, the same place they could have and should have started from 364 days earlier. It's like tearing apart the entire house looking for your keys, only to find them exactly where you dropped them. The wreck is resting at a steep angle, surrounded by debris, players, fin structures, torn hatches, cables. The hull is twisted, ruptured in sections, compacted by pressure so intense it reduced hardened metal to folded foil. The front end is obliterated, the rear split into piece. No sign of life, no chance of survival. No way anyone inside could have even shouted a warning before the implosion crushed every pocket of air. They say the submarine likely suffered a violent internal collapse, starting with the battery fire. Yes, that one from the last known message. When salt water mixed with the forward battery bank, it caused a chemical reaction. Hydrogen gas built up, then heat, then ignition. The fire may have weakened structural systems. The pressure did the rest. From then on, time and mass took over. One historian later remarks that implosions like this generate energy equivalent to several tons of TNT, focused inward. It's not just a break, it's more like the sub folding in on itself at nearly 1,200 kilometers per hour. The process is instantaneous. The human brain doesn't process trauma that fast. So yes, if you're looking for comfort, here's your dose of mercy. They didn't feel a thing. But those left behind, they feel everything. You sit with the image of that twisted metal, and you wonder, what did it sound like from inside in the final seconds? Was there a hiss, a crack, a metallic sigh before the void? You won't get answers. The sub doesn't talk, but its condition does whisper. Let's add a quirky little twist. Not long before its final voyage, the San Juan had reported being tailed by a British submarine. Not exactly James Bond levels of tension, but enough to get eyebrows raised. Some former naval officers mention abnormal tracking patterns. During earlier missions, theories sprout like weeds. Was she spooked? Was she watching something she shouldn't have been? Historians still argue whether geopolitics played even the smallest role in this tragedy, or whether it was just a mechanical time bomb that finally ticked zero. The Argentine Navy releases high-resolution images of the wreck to the public, not to spark more questions, but to answer one. Yes, this is where it ends. This twisted cylinder, 907 meters down, is now a tomb, a war grave, the final resting place of 44 human beings. You'd think that would be enough to settle things. But no, grief has a sequel. It's called blame. Within weeks, Argentina's defense minister resigns. The Navy's top brass is reshuffled. Multiple investigations launch. Technical audits, parliamentary hearings, criminal inquiries. Documents are leaked. Warnings are unearthed. You read one memo from months earlier. Battery issues logged, corrosion noted, electrical panels flagged as outdated. You sigh. The usual paper trail. Every tragedy has one. You can almost hear the stapler clicks echoing down empty hallways. One family lawyer compares the submarine to a moving coffin. Another parent refers to the mission as state-sanctioned roulette. These aren't exaggerations. These are people who stared at a blank horizon for 365 days and got rewarded with blurry sonar scans and policy jargon. Public trust nosedives, and while the country mourns, its military faces questions. The answer is brutally simple. Oceans don't care what you think you know. In the months following the discovery, makeshift memorials rise in coastal cities. People place small model subs beside candlelit photos. Murals appear on naval walls, on sidewalks, on overpasses. 44 stars, sometimes grouped, sometimes circling the name, San Juan. Occasionally, someone paints Ileana's face, her gaze locked on the horizon. The families finally get what they were denied for a year, something to point to. Not a body, not even a recovered scrap. but a place, a dot on a map. Coordinates, a kind of closure you can't really touch, but can at least draw a circle around. Still, questions echo longer than answers. Was the fire survivable at first? Could an early rescue have made a difference? Why did it take Ocean Infinity's private effort to find what state-backed fleets couldn't? And if it hadn't been found, what then? Would we have simply moved on? Let the deep keep its secret? You stare into the screen one last time. The sonar image remains. It doesn't flinch, it doesn't blink, and it certainly doesn't explain. And now you're left with the aftermath, the echoes that keep bouncing through official hulls, family homes, and salt-thick air. It's not the blast that lingers, it's the quiet. You hear it in how reporters pause before using past tense, in the way naval officers still avoid the phrase preventable, and in how a country still refers to ARA San Juan not as a relic, but a poke. Presence, a kind of scar under the surface. You visit the coast, Mar del Plata, where the submarine should have docked. It's a modest port, no flashy infrastructure, just steel, stone, and wind that smells like history. You imagine the 44 crew members stepping off that sub, laughing, exhausted, maybe hungry for something that isn't rehydrated stew. You picture families waiting, waving from the pier, but no one steps off, and the families don't leave. They just stand there, days, then months, holding signs, holding each other. Their grief becomes institutional. Names are engraved. A memorial rises near the shore. It's simple, solemn, with a stone sculpture of a sub-bow slicing through concrete like it's breaching. The names of the crew curl around the base. At night, someone leaves candles, sometimes drawings. One kid leaves a plastic submarine with googly eyes glued to it. Strange how grief sometimes needs to smile. And then comes the paperwork storm. Investigations compile data, release timelines, conduct interviews. Politicians turn tragedy into opportunity. Some shout for military reform. Others point fingers so hard, you wonder if anyone's listening. Meanwhile, engineers dissect the sub's last hours like surgeons with x-rays. Battery chamber faults, faulty seals, decades-old wiring, bad protocols, or maybe just bad luck. And let's not forget the decades-old warning signs filed under "to be addressed later." Historians still argue whether this was purely mechanical or part of a larger systemic rot. One expert suggests the San Juan's battery fire should have been survivable if the submarine had surfaced fast. Another claims even surfacing would have changed nothing. You don't know which story to trust. All you know is 44 souls didn't get the ending they deserved. In one testimony, a Navy technician admits a chilling phrase: "We learned more from the debris than we ever learned from drills." Not exactly comforting, is it? You start to see how these things happen, not through one catastrophic mistake, but through dozens of small ones, stacked like matchsticks near a lit candle. And through it all, the ocean just stays quiet. You return to that thought a lot. The idea that a machine can vanish, that an entire crew can simply slip beneath the waves and leave almost nothing behind. No distress signal, no floating debris, just that one distant boom, logged and filed, unnoticed until it was too late. It leaves a strange sensation in your chest, like deja vu from a life you never lived. Maybe because the sea has always had a thing for swallowing stories. Atlantis, Titanic, Kursk, now San Juan. Some names we carve into memory, others dissolve in salt. Here's a lighter, yet oddly haunting quirk. One of the crew, on his last phone call before departure, joked with his mother about how long the mission would be. "Don't worry, Mar," he said. "We'll be home before you miss me." The mother later framed that text, hung it on the wall, and talks to it like he's still in the room. These are the human bits you don't find in sonar data. In the years since, Argentina has taken small steps toward naval reform. Funding increases, equipment reviews, updated safety procedures. But it's not the sort of change you can measure quickly. After all, the sea isn't interested in progress. It doesn't forgive just because you promise to do better next time. You imagine future sailors walking past the San Juan Memorial, Some will pause, others won't. But the story, at least, will remain, etched into history, into stone, into the haunted silence below 900 meters of Atlantic water. And now, the lights dim again. You picture the sub as it is now, still down there, still whole in its own broken way. No rescue crews, no bright searchlights, just pressure, silt, time, and quiet. You float above it in your mind, hands in your jacket pockets, unsure whether to salute or just close your eyes. Because how do you say goodbye to something that didn't leave a door open? And yet, the San Juan hasn't vanished. Not really, not anymore. Because you know it now. You've walked its halls in your imagination, heard its engines, watched its blinkers pulse in the dark. You carried it with you through the storm of politics and pain and human error. That's something. And sometimes, memory is the only buoy that matters. Wind down, 300 words. And so here you are, at the edge of the world's softest grave, where pressure did what time could not, sealed a moment. Forever. You don't hear anything now but the hush of deep water in your mind, the low murmur that feels like peace, or maybe just a long exhale. You let yourself slow down. You picture the crew, not in their final moments, but before, standing in the conning tower, cracking jokes in the mess hall, rolling their eyes at safety drills, reading old books, listening to the hum of the ocean precedent steel walls. Not heroes carved in marble, just people, living, breathing, hoping to go home. The sea is vast, yes, but it is not infinite. Somewhere in its depth, that ship rests, not in darkness, but in stillness, not lost, but placed, as if the ocean, in its own strange way, understood it was holding something sacred. So, you step away now, not because you forget, but because memory doesn't need to shout. It just needs to float, quietly, steadily. Take a deep breath. Let the story settle. Feel the gentle tug of sleep beginning to curl at the corners of your mind. And as you drift, remember, not all ships sail forever. Some become part of the sea, part of us, and part of the lullaby we whisper to the ones who never surfaced. Sleep well, friend. You made it all the way to the end. End of script. You have great today.